it's transpired today to me, looking at everybody here and what everybody's involved in, and what everybody does, that it's a very broad church, this grazing, isn't it? And none of us, or not many of us, are set stalkers. And I think a lot of it comes down to personal belief and what you represent and what you stand for. I've always been massively in awe of what the dairy guys do. Technically very switched on, generally really impressive what you talk about. And it makes me realise that maybe I'm not as well geared as all that, that maybe that's just not who and what I am. And I'm quite happy with that. I quite like my mob grazing world. I quite like my hillsides in the middle of Perthshire, and I quite enjoy doing the way we do things, although I don't think we do them technically well enough at times. So, we've been set stalking, I touched on that this morning. We have this big block of dirt, and we're not making maximising the potential of it. But it's really expensive to make mistakes. And it's really expensive to put a lot of capital into something and not knowing what the turn is going to be before you've actually figured it all out. And when I started this grazing journey, I wasn't really aware of where the ceilings were and what we could and what we could not do. And it's taken us a while to work our way into that. I do know if I get my PhD to 6.5 that things will explode. And maybe I need to focus a bit more on that in the low grounds. But at the same time, the biggest advantage at home is definitely higher up. It's definitely knocking our way through some of that rougher country and getting a better quality pasture in there. I just can't do it easily by mech and tech. So what I enjoy with my mob grazings is that because we're working over some fairly big spaces, we're only really working with sort of 3 to 4 groups of stock at any one time across the farm. And that consolidates what we're doing, consolidates labour units, and allows us to get across the landscape reasonably efficiently, and changing the genetics and the profile as we're doing that. I'm a great believer in trying to get to what I'm classing as total nutrition. And I was listening to a scientist who specialised in food nutrition speaking a few years ago. I think he was based in Liverpool University. And one of the comments he came out with was that the food that we are producing today is 70% less nutritious than it was in the 1940s. So we're producing a volume more food, and that was the task that we as farmers were set to do post the war, but we're producing far less quality nutrition. And that concerns me quite a bit because there's quite a bit of epigenetic play on all of that. So I'm very minded when I'm running my system that I don't want to be dependent massively on inputs, and maybe we're not as high geared as we could or should be, but I think there's a social and economic and environmental context to what we do, and the mob mantra, therefore, suits me. The words that enigma me and annoy me is this whole blastering around regen. What does it stand for? What does it mean? I don't think it's been beautifully defined, but it's been well marketed. And I don't think that I think it's a shame that we feel we've got to be regen, because then therefore we're accepting we've done damage in the past or creating damage just now. But I think we do need to rehabilitate some of the lands that we are managing. So for me, firstly, business has got to make money, we've got to be socially responsible, and we've got to be environmentally responsible. And if we can tie all these three together in a grazing and a pastoral journey, then I'm delighted to do so. But I think we need to be technically better. What else notes I've written down here? Okay, right. Where I think we'll get to with this mob operation is that we will continue to push stock numbers to a higher degree of what we've got. I think we'll plough in more infrastructure, more water systems. I just do not see us buying in products. Don't want to be perfectly honest. I think we'll take the wool off a sheep, might eventually replace a sheep into a deer herd. I think the cattle will get to sort of 200 plus cows, but we'll try and do it all through adding value. And I'm really keen on telling stories. I'm really keen on trying to bring the local community around what we're doing food-wise. We retail a lot of eggs, about 4,000 hens. We never actually touched on that this morning, and we retail all them locally. We're about to launch a honey brand next week into local markets as well, and that then also ties back into the beef and the butcher shops. So I'm really keen to take people on a food journey, and what we're finding with what we're doing across the landscapes at home is that we have a massive amount of recreational tourism that walks through us. These people come, they walk around inadvertently walk through our grazing platform. They don't really realise they're doing it. They talk about it, and they go back to the shops and they buy eggs and cakes and coffees and all these things. Therefore, all these customers, we're fronting a house that's selling our industry to them, and we're doing that through enhancing landscapes, through mob grazing, and through just bringing more wildlife back to farm.
There was a consultant, I can't remember who it was, he asked the room of farmers, okay, how many tons of nitrogen do you have in the shed? And every farmer said, yeah, I've got this amount. How many tons of feed you got in the shed? Yeah, I know how many tons I've got that. How much silage you got? Yep, I know that. How many tons of free grass, dry matter have you got lying about in the farm? You know, the stuff that grows for nothing and that we use every day. Silence. No one knew. And for me, that was probably one of the biggest turning points that I had in farming was, right, this stuff grows for nothing. It's going to grow anyway. Why not manage it? And it's free. And that was the point. It was one of those comments that you couldn't ignore. There's no way I could have ignored that when the driving factor behind this business and all our businesses is that green stuff, whether it be long, whether it be short, whether it be tall, in the field. And I think the fundamentals that we're just all here today to discuss it and chat about it is fantastic. So sorry, this is not destroying Alec and anything that he's doing, but this system suits this farm. You know, we're speaking about Charlie growing cows out on the 15th of February. It's not uncommon for that road down to the farm to be 3 foot deep in drifted snow in February. So, you know, it is apples and oranges we're speaking about, but the fact that we're speaking about it, and I'm sure I've learned something from Charlie today. You know, I've been very anti-nitrogen to a certain point, but, you know, the arguments made are valid and good, and I think we've all learned something.
So, John, this is your opportunity to challenge Alec on some of the things he said, and maybe be a bit specific towards the mob grazing side of things.
Do you think I am degrading my soils with the way I graze them with the short grass grazing?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think you probably drain the mineralisation the top inch or 2 inches where your root depth is actually going. I think you probably haven't given yourself the environmental resilience that you could have. So, i.e., if you're grazing slightly taller covers, you'd potentially have roots deeper. You're not using as much energy. Charlie, so I'm actually buying the argument that you're not triggering that soil response. If your root system is deeper, you'd have more environmental resilience to drier spells, wetter spells. You talked about drought being an issue. I don't know how big an issue drought is in Scotland or the UK. I think some of it's just not enough cover across the farm. The Aussies would have it in place that if you have a longer residual grass sitting there, you'll maybe catch between 1 mil and 1.5 mil of dew condensation each night. So that's like 45 mil of rain potentially over a month. So if we're out of rain for a couple of months, you know, that's still just under 4 inches of moisture by having taller covers.
Okay, so how do I fit in these woolly sheep into a situation with tall grass grazing and get performance?
Well, in my context, I don't want to slag off your business. I don't know inside out. Probably reduce sheep numbers a bit and maybe push up cattle numbers. So therefore, you've got a ruminant there that has a bigger forest capacity, can handle a slightly maybe degraded or rougher pasture. So you have a buffer strip sitting within your farm, and then you can prioritise grazing to the sheep, drive productivity on them with the better bit, or on certain cover ranges. But you've also got more feed sitting, which either you can forage, hay silage, or use as a buffer feed later on in the year.
Okay. What's your challenge to John on paddock grazing?
Why are you so slow at adapting taller covers?
I would say, because we are a relatively sheep-heavy business, and I'll be honest, that will probably change over the years, that I have a slight fixation on how grass should look on a farm, and that's a hard one to kick. You know, we speak about weeds and thistles, and I know the diversity and everything like that. I've spent my life trying to keep swards clean and look presentable in my mind. It's vanity, I suppose, to a certain extent.
I mean, you can always ditch the sheep and build a golf course because you're so mad about everything looking the same.
I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah, it's. I take it on board. I've come to the conclusion after 10 years of beating myself up about how the farm looks and how it is. I've got to take pleasure in the farm and how I go out and how I like to look at it. And I know that'll maybe be detriment to a bit of time that I spend doing it. But the short grass grazing, the transformation in the farm and how we work, you know, the good bit about all this grazing management, to shift sheep, cattle, a new break every day, every second day, every third day, whatever you're doing, that's the good bit.
Is that therapy, is it?
That's therapy.
Is that OCD or CDO?
No, it's just that's the real pleasure about doing grazing management, I think. To putting cattle and putting sheep into a fresh break, you know, by default, I think your stockmanship gets better because you can't ignore problems because they always are at the back of the mob when they're shifting over a fence. And I think to that certain extent, it makes the job more enjoyable. For us, like starting doing pre-lambing rotations compared to a winter, which would be, you know, or a early spring, which was carting out feeding, carting out silage, to what still feels weird is on the 1st of March putting all the ewes back to all the multiples back to grass and shifting them once a day, and that's it. You know, there's no feed. It's just you know you're meeting the nutritional needs of that ewe and twin, triplet, whatever it is, and it's great. But yes, I'll take on board what you're saying about the taller covers, Alec. As I always do, and I guarantee you'll come back in 3 years and the place will be 6 feet tall. One mob of one cows running about.
Thistles every place.
And I might have even bought one of your jackets, but then...
That's maybe a touch more to hope for, is it? Maybe your wife would like one. She was due a new jacket.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to catch on that one.
Can I ask the question, audience? Hands up here who's actually set stocking. Is there anyone here going to confess to set stocking?
Some of the time, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So a question to you, John, because you're just one step removed from set stocking.
Okay.
Where would you be if you're still set stocking?
Where would we be still set stocking? We wouldn't be profitable. We wouldn't be profitable without subsidy, I don't think. Not the amount we've managed to reduce inputs and the extra production that we put on. There is parts of the business, you know, when we wean ewes and they go to the hill and that, there is a slight relief because it gives you a bit of a break from the day-to-day shift in stock, but I would never go back. I can never even imagine going back to just turfing everything out in the spring and hoping everything lasts, and then when you have issues, you just pick up the phone and phone LS Smiley and another Arctic load of feeding comes in or another Arctic load of fertiliser comes in. It's given us freedom, I think. Yeah. So yeah, it's very difficult. I'm actually slightly envious of Alex sometimes with his system because he doesn't need to worry about it to a certain point, these peaks. Would I be right?
I mean, behind this cool and calm exterior, I get twitchy.
No.
I do. If things are not moving at least every second day, I'm getting a twitch. Okay. I really am. I want ding, ding, ding. I mean, the difference for me, going back to your question, Johnny, is I think curiosity or mindset. What happens if we do this? But what's the response? If I dig a hole, is the soil changing? Is the roots changing? Is there more aggregation? Is there more worms? So for me, it's like having a massive experiment on the go, which is different. I think what Charlie's conversation today, apart from massively well geared, highly capitalised, highly geared, highly volatile price points, milk checks in every day. It's a geared system. So he's needing. I feel he needs that response to cope with that volatility. We have this massive, expansive block of ground, which is probably underutilised massively. But I'm just curious. Mindset is curious. I don't like a second bite. I don't like thinking anything's getting overgrazed. When I see cows and we've got them moving in 12-hour shifts, I'm happy. We went away the team had a long weekend off, so everything was put on the 3-4 day breaks as we had disappeared on a late Friday. We weren't in much of a fit state until we were back on the Monday, to be perfectly honest. So, it was great to give us the business the flexibility to get away and have a sort of 3-4 day break allocation set up. but I'm twitchy about it because I know it's cost me money.
And in terms of rest period, back to Johnny's question, do you think that's a definitive difference between the two of you?
I'm quite happy with a longer rest period because I know I've got a big mob of stock I can call in to reset. And I do think we need to reset every hectare once a year. I don't necessarily buy into this whole mantra of massively tall covers. I think you've got to get feed quality right, digestibility right. I think you've got to trample on the stuff you don't use. I don't think you can have them ranched, so to speak. I think it's got to be quite precise, quite concise, and you've got to feed the rumen. You've got to keep it buzzing all the time. And if you have a highly productive platform and it's regrowing really quick, but you've got to be in quicker again, but you've got to allow the plant to express itself. And I think in a 21-day system, the plant doesn't actually get a chance to express itself and fully reach its potential, is my feeling over it. But that depends on context, and it depends on the type of soils you're working over.
We have a question from the back there. Yep.
Hi there, question to you both. If you increased your livestock units by 20% across your whole farm, would your profit go up? And if so, or down, if so, why?
So if you increase your livestock by 20%, would your profits go up or down, and why?
So we were carrying more stock, but in a sheep-heavier system. And I've spoken about this before, the balance was wrong between cattle and sheep. We found, the pinch points became far pinchier with that balance when it was wrong. To answer the question, you have to be wary of, I think, of vanity production. We all like to say we've got X amount of ewes and X amount of cows, and to be honest, it's just bullshit. Because we need to quantify that. It's fine to say you've got 1,000 ewes or 300 cows and that. It's like, well, that's great. Is it profitable? Are you being a busy fool? It's all these questions. Some of you might have mentioned or wondered why I went over the financials of the business before I started today. Coming to a farm I've been to hundreds of farm visits. We can go around, we can kick tires, we can look at this and look at that, and everything's lovely and everything's nice. Without a financial context of the business, why the hell would you listen to me? Why would you? What relevance does what I have to say to any of you guys if I can't actually turn around and quantify it by saying, right, this business can make a bit of cash. I feel that we're going in a reasonable right direction for us and for our family. So to answer, we could push stock numbers a bit more, but I have to be very wary on the pressure it puts on me, on Alex, on Dad, and I suppose it probably come to a time in my life where contentment is all I'm striving for in a business, is to be content. I don't want these ups and downs. I just want nice, plain sailing, so everybody doesn't have too much pressure on them.
I think it depends what stock class you're putting on, Callum. I think what we're finding is that the sheep are too big a drain and resource for us, and I can't manage. I'm a price taker with sheep. The beef operation, we're able to push cow numbers. We're able to get young stock developed off farm, and I'm able to negotiate a price point with the end user. So I'm not overly exposed to markets. I also think we've got other added value products on farm as well. So we're bringing honey in, it's working well within the system. It's a completely different price point, and we've got a market established for that. So I'm mindful of not pushing too hard, because this spring we were pretty flat to the boards, to be brutally honest. I kicked off pea lambing rotation too early, didn't get the growth I was expecting 21 days later, and we were kind of flat against it, and we had to think pretty fast on our feet to find feed for different stock groups at that time. And some stock, the young stock was stalled. The cows were pushed farther away than I wanted them to be, because I had to prioritise ewes and twin lambs. So it's a waffly answer, but yeah, I think as long as we can get the marketplace will buy a product with the story that we're telling for it, because I'm looking to brand it and market off farm, then I've no problem pushing production further.
And from Jock at the back there?
Question for Alex, probably. If you were finishing cattle on your unit, would you still do that in a mob grazing scenario?
Define what you class as mob grazing, Jock.
So if you were, would you be trying to finish them up on your high ground or having them quite tight, rather than on a sort of short grass rotational grazing system?
Where we're developing, pushing younger stock on, so as an example, the heifers we take through the winter might do 0.4 a day over the winter period. Time we get them to better grass in March and April, we go to 0.7 to 1.5 kilos a day until late April into May, and then some of them are pushing 1.75s a day into June, July, because we're tracking all that. I won't push that much beyond sort of 40, 50 day rest period. Obviously don't get performance. And we're sort of double checking. And what I also find is as these cattle grow and the ruminant capacity develops, that live weight gain kind of keeps pushing, and it'll sit running about 1.65, 1.85 a day, but maybe on a sort of 50 day rest period. So I think the definition of mob grazing and rotational grazing is kind of one and the same. I'm not going to put young stock that I'm trying to derive cash out of higher up. I don't think that's the stock class for it.
Emily?
It's a question to both of you, and actually I'll caveat it slightly and say it's just really, really nice being here today, and a lot of people who were involved in grazing groups, and just how much everybody's systems change over time, because we all remember Alex's first system and how that's really changed. But and I think a few people have touched on the point that actually, does it really matter if we all have different grazing systems? So the question is, what do you think are the 3 key things to get right in your grazing system?
What do you think are the 3 key things to get right in your grazing system? John.
All right. Number 1, surround yourself with positive people. Have people round about you that will encourage you. That's for life, you know. But for me, you know, I've been very fortunate here. Dad's given me free rein to do what I want, and we've made some horrendous cock-ups, and yet we've still kept going to an end goal that I think's been worthwhile. Knowledge transfer is key to whatever you're doing on farm, because there's a solution to every problem in that Scottish agriculture on a farm somewhere. You've just got to get off your arse and find it, and then take it home and apply it to your farm. And 3, I would just say soil. You know, it's back to soil. You know, if your soils aren't healthy, in your perception and how you want to look after your soil, that'll be the one that'll keep you the whole time, I would say. So.
I think as we're very lucky as an industry that we're a global industry. I mean, we're all meeting locally today, but as a global community, there's a massive amount of knowledge, and then there's a huge ability to travel. So the greatest thing for me was getting off farm, getting that chance to travel, having a few remote days in remote parts of the world, and having time to think. So having thinking space, massively important. Definitely emphasise John's point about surround yourself with radiators and not drains. I mean, fuck them. Quite frankly, you know, if they're not happy, get out, give somebody else a crack. 2, in a grazing system, be the wolf. Don't muck around with problems. If it's not right, don't bitch about it, just change it. Get rid of it, shoot it, run it over, do what you need to do. You know, just don't waste time on it. And 3, family context. You know, if you can't recommend what you're doing to your kids, your family, if you can't work with good people, then challenge yourself as to why you're doing it, and just be free to change. Be frightened to be. You should be frightened to be static.
Just briefly, it's really interesting though, because most of your answers are about social things. That is fascinating.
Yeah, social changes, social influences there.
The technical bits to certain points, the easy bit. You know, anyone can go and lash up a couple of fences and do that. But if you don't have a network of people around about you to share the good bits, the bad bits, and to gain the knowledge to change your system, you will never change. You'll just farm the way you do forever and ever.
I think the other point is you do have to manage.
Yeah, it's
managing, you got to also capture data sets, and I've been really shit the last couple of years at keeping on top of all these silos of data. But we do gather a lot of information, and when we do eventually sit down to go through it, there's always a lot of really good learnings captured up in data sets, whether it's weight gains, EIDs, soil chemistry, biology, whatever's happening there. You need to have a story to add context to your journey, and patience. I often think running a tiddlywinks factory would be great, because you can turn it on, you can turn it off, you start it, you stop it, it's all the same. But out here, you only get 1st of May once a year, and it doesn't always pan out.